Welcome to the Rock's Back Pages podcast. I'm Barney Hoskins, and I'm on Zoom with Mark Pringle.
Hi, Barney.
And Jasper Mirison-Bowie.
Hello, Barney.
And joining us all the way from Southern California to discuss all that's new in the world's largest archive of music journalism are Jeff Walker and Kim Gottlieb Walker. Welcome, Jeff and Kim.
Thank you, guys.
Great to be here.
Our guests, I believe, met at a Cat Stevens show in 1972. Was that the Shrine Auditorium, by any chance? Yes. Good. Okay. Our researchers have been doing their work then.
We actually met just before the concert because Jeffrey got me into the concert. That was the night we met. And Music World was just being formed.
Oh.
And the publisher asked him if he could get me into the concert. And so we met when I went to his apartment to get the ticket to the concert.
At least one good thing came out of Cat Stevens' concert.
Well, it doesn't get more romantic than that, Kim. And you've been married now for 53 years. So many congratulations. We were joking earlier that it's probably the longest lasting marriage ever in the history of Hollywood, right? Apart from, who was Paul Newman and his wife? They were married for
Joanne Woodward.
Woodward. They were married for many years. Let's not go down that road. So Jeff and Kim worked together in the music business for many years. Jeff as a writer, editor, publicist, and A&R man. Kim as a photographer who last year published the novel Lenswoman in Love, and we'll get to that a bit later. But let's start with Music World, which was a monthly free sheet in the Southern California area that you edited, Jeff, and for which you, Kim, were the photo editor. Will you tell us about Music World and how it started, Jeff?
Well, for me, it was sort of the end result of my foray into music in the first place, in terms of professional anyway. I came out to L.A. from New York in 1967 and to be an actor. And basically between acting gigs and wanting desperately to own some records and go to concerts, I started writing reviews and interviews and so forth. But this came about because of my godfather, oddly enough. And growing up in New York, he was a vice president at UA Records back in the days of the Beatles. And because of Lloyd, his name was Lloyd Leipzig, and because of Lloyd, I was able to see the Beatles at Forest Hills, and I was at the New York premiere of Hard Day's Night. And the British invasion essentially changed my life, even though I've been into music for my entire life. It's probably one of the driving forces and the escape mechanisms of my childhood. But Lloyd moved out to the West Coast around the same. He was a vice president of publicity at UA on the West Coast when I came out here.
Okay.
And in between acting gigs, I would visit Lloyd very often. And it just so happens that UA at the time also employed Marty Cerf, who was a member of the famous Bennett Cerf, Christopher Cerf family. And they let him essentially publish a magazine as a side gig during his job at UA. And so I got to visit Marty often and started writing for Phonograph Record magazine. And based on that, I came in from the fan point of view. And based on that and doing some interviews for our artists, particularly it kind of gets into Don McLean there, but I was offered a job at probably the most prestigious PR firm in Hollywood at the time, Rogers, Cowan and Brenner. And they wanted to hire someone who would reach out to the college press, the independent press, and the rock and roll press. And I was lucky enough to be the person they hired for that. And at the time, my clients, among them or the people who I worked, meaning I wrote their bios and set up some interviews, were Jim Croce and Rick Nelson, the Staple Singers, Billy Eckstein. It was a very eclectic group, but I was able to, basically, that was my first job as a publicist, and I had never even for a moment thought of being a publicist.
Okay.
And I was there for, I guess, about a year. Kim and I met towards the rear end of that because I had heard I had spoken to a guy named Harvey Miller, whose dream was to start a music magazine that would be given free at all music outlets and concerts and so forth, but only be advertising would be the only revenue. So it was a kind of an unusual at the time. It was not, now you go into, or now, but there was a point where you could go in a record store and there'd be stacks of independent free magazines and so forth. But this was the first. Mm-hmm. And so I left Rogers and Cowan and accepted the job at Music World. And the first assignment was get Kim into this Cat Stevens concert. So that was the very first gig we did together. I have to say, when I opened the door and saw her there for the first time, I was rather awestruck. And
well, why don't we ask him at this point? I mean, how come you didn't have like a photo pass, a press pass to come to shoot Cat Stevens that night? Because you had been photographing musicians and gigs already for a few years, right? Or not?
Yes, but it was all freelance. I wasn't usually being sent there by someone. It was usually just on my own.
Okay. So Jeff got you in there, and that was really the beginning of, professional photography of musicians.
And I was dressed in my hippie finery when he saw me, my Indian bedspread dress and my little velvet ribbon around my neck. And
I should hope so too. That's fantastic.
And apparently 3 days later, he told a friend of his at RCA that he was going to marry me.
Wow.
Well,
yeah, it's true.
He had the right crystal ball, right? Anyway, so you photographed Cat Stevens that night?
Yep, from the front row.
You did, from the front row. Okay, wonderful. So Music World is how old at this point, Jeff?
Oh, 0. That was it. That was the beginning of what would be the first editorial part of Music World.
I get it. Okay. This Harvey Miller, where did he come from? I mean, what was his story?
In publishing, I really can't tell you what Harvey was doing before we met him or where he is now or whatever became of him.
if he ever even existed.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he spent so much time trying to sell ads to keep us afloat that he didn't really have time to do much else. And we made just enough money to keep it going month by month, not enough to take salaries.
Or pay our writers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
I'm going to jump to the thing that brought me together with you guys in the first place, which is this Tom Waits cover story for Music World, June 1973, because I was researching my Tom Waits biography, and I came to your house in Laurel Canyon. Are you still in that house?
Yes.
Yeah, great, good, fantastic. And you were just so lovely that afternoon. I'm so grateful to you. You told me it's just a great story of how you went to interview Tom Waits, who was not an unknown, but he'd only had the first album out. Just tell us your memories of that day and how. I mean, it was certainly the first Waits cover story, right? So tell us how it came about and how you first heard about Tom Waits.
Well, from my point of view, I was a big fan of the entire stable at Electra Asylum and was very old friends with the head of publicity there at the time, Billy James, and a gal named Lita Elliskew who worked over there. So it was really just a kind of matter of course that when they signed a new artist, I would hear about it or get an early listen and so forth. So it was really nothing more than that, is that we've signed this kid, Tom Waits. I loved the record. And I thought it would be, we wanted to put we didn't want to do kind of, as you can tell by the whole run of Music Worlds, there was only musicians on, I think, the last 5, the first 2 or so were just kind of music themed. So I think Tom might have been the first musician we actually put on the cover.
Okay.
And basically it was at what came out of the interview and Kim's photos that we decided to put it on the cover. At this time, we were still struggling, but I have to say that the industry, all of the labels embraced the magazine immediately, and we had tremendous access to some people right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kim, tell us about your memories of photographing Tom in this very cramped little court cottage, as I think Jeff described it, in Silver Lake.
Yeah, it was his apartment, which was pretty chaotic, but I mean, our house is pretty chaotic too, so we felt right at home.
Same James Dean poster on the wall.
Yeah. I don't remember hearing anything because when I'm shooting, I don't hear anything. Everything is in my eyes, not in my ears.
Jasper, you noted that in an interview that Kim gave.
I heard an interview that, and I was wondering, I mean, just kind of as a working as a double act in that sense, what that was like in terms of, because I mean, when one hears some portrait photographers talk about their work, it's like, well, I'm trying to build up a rapport with this person and trying to get. But did you see yourself more as documenting what was going on in the conversations between Jeff and in this case, obviously Tom Waits? And how did you approach like getting the shot that you were after? What was your kind of ideal for that?
I always consider myself more a historian than an artist. I'm there to document what's going on. Mm-hmm. And Tom was very cooperative about posing as well, which was lovely. And as I said, I don't hear anything when I'm shooting, but I do interact with the people I'm shooting as
right.
in a friendly way and try to put them at ease. And he was wonderful.
He seems very at ease in those photographs. They're really worth seeking out. And obviously this is an audio only thing, but listeners go and find them because seems like a happy man, Tom Waits, in those photographs.
He was at the beginning of his career. He had it all. He was looking forward to everything, but at that point he was unknown. And we just had a conversation about music and mutual interest and so forth during that time. And the first couple of albums still fell within, or at least had songs that fell within kind of what the sound, so to speak, that Electro Asylum. And I think it was probably the third or fourth that we began to see the Tom Waits that emerged both in the jazz and the vocals and the things we kind of associate with him now.
It's a great early piece, and I'd say it was one of the sort of key early Waits pieces for me in my research. And this, his voice is already loud and clear in this piece. So I'll just read this little bit. Tom is also the first solo recording artist on Asylum to stray from the country folk format that the labels become identified with. And this is Tom speaking. I'm very glad I'm a departure from Asylum. I'm getting pretty sick of the country music thing. Anyway, so much of it is really Los Angeles country music, which isn't country. It's Laurel Canyon. It's very difficult to live a country frame of mind when you're living in LA. I mean, later in other interviews, he'd be much more disrespectful of his Asylum label mates. I think he said of the Eagles, like, they act like they've got, like sort of horse shit on their cowboy boots, but it's just dog shit from Laurel Canyon. So it's a fantastic piece, and I love the photographs too. So it's just really, really important. And we're featuring the cover of Music World on the homepage this week, listeners, if you want to see it. So I thought actually, given the feature when this goes out will be actually about Tom Waits in 1976, because it's 50 kind of years since Small Change and all kinds of things that happened for him in that year. We also happened to stumble on a bit of audio of Tom Waits talking in a rather irascible mood from 1976. So with your permission, Kim and Jeff, we'll just hear the inimitable voice of Tom Waits. And this is, just to put it in context, it is a guy who called himself Radio Pete, and we have some of his pieces on RBP and some of his audios. Mark Bleesener is his real name, and he basically barged backstage in Denver with a microphone, and this is what happened.
Excuse me. I was living in Tahunga when you needed me, and I was down there at the Troubadour watching you, Jeff. I want to know if there's any truth to the story I heard about you moving to Colorado. No. Say what? No truth at all in that room. Did you ever play rock and roll music when you were younger? Huh? When you were younger, like you were about my age, and when you were playing in garages, did you ever play any rock and roll music? I used to have an electric guitar. It's only 19. You're only 19, huh? I thought you were about an old man like 27 or so. Did you play rock music in a band? Didn't call it that then. What'd you call it? Oh, I just said an electric guitar. I have a St. George Electric. What kind of shit were you into? Louis Armstrong or Chuck Berry or what? We did rhythm and blues.
Text Tom, that's fine. We'll get a bar to clean up here.
All right.
Why don't you all go out here and take a right?
Well, I'm not moving, and you have to go. You want to go get some coffee at the White Spot? I don't. Can I ask you what you think about Patti Smith? Patti Hearst? Patti Smith. I've heard of Patti Hearst. I've never heard of Patti Smith. Oh, you know who I'm talking about. Come on. What do you think about Robert Hilburn saying you're a pop, valuable pop contributor? Give me a second.
No, one more, and then we got
what is this for? It's for the Rocky Mountain Musical Express. The promo man from WEA sent me over. All right, well, they say you have to leave. I guess you have to leave. All right, is that all you can give me? What do you want me to, what am I going to give you? I gave you the best years of my life. Thanks, Tom.
That's just, I think you'll agree, that's classic Waits. Not the guy you met in 73, but I gave you the best years of my life. Anyway, yeah, look, I think we all love Tom Waits to one degree or another. And yeah, I mean, can you remember, either of you, just sort of like how that issue with Tom on the cover, how that was received? And what did he express any feelings about it?
Not directly that I can remember anyway. I mean, one of the most memorable, as a matter of fact, we never saw Tom again. And I still have the record album of Steve Allen and Jack Kerouac together that he lent me, or essentially gave me that day.
Quick, in other words, you never returned it, Jeff. Just be honest. I
never returned. I've been happy to return it, but
Tom, if you're listening, he's still got it.
I still have remember it vividly.
There was a little alley in San Francisco, back of the Southern Pacific Station at 3rd and Townsend, in red brick of drowsy, lazy afternoons with everybody at work in offices. In the air, you feel the impending rush of their commuter frenzy.
But it also gives you an idea of the range of what we were talking about that day. I'm sure there's a tape somewhere. I should probably go dig out all of my cassettes and digitize them.
Well, you very much should, Jeff. I think we would all agree that you should all go and dig out your cassettes.
I've been doing a lot of it recently. I did it with Bonnie Raitt and with the Graham Parsons. We finally digitized, and Cameron and I put together. We have missing parts. I hope we haven't actually unified them, but I'm sending him what I have, and he's sending me what he has.
Oh, well, so listeners, to be clear, we're talking about Cameron Crowe.
Oh, yeah. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. Sorry about that.
Well, actually, no, we were going to go straight on to Graham, so this is perfect. But I was just going to mention, because I saw a review of it in The Guardian today, is Cameron's audio book, which obviously he's reading himself, of his memoir, The Uncool, is just coming out this week. So this, I mean, we're talking about Cameron Crowe at the age of about, like 13 or something?
I think 15.
15, yeah.
yeah. That's fantastic, though. You still have tapes. So let's jump onto this then, because I hadn't even quite realized that you guys together went to interview Graham Parsons, and Emmylou was there, and Phil Kaufman, the legendary road manager, was there, and they were, I mean, tell us about that day. I believe it was in somewhere like North Hollywood, or can you remember anything about it? Somewhere in the valley?
Which canyon was it? Yeah, I'm trying to, actually, which canyon was it?
I think it was just somewhere in the San Fernando Valley. Yeah. I don't remember exactly where.
Yeah, at Phil's house.
Oh, it was at Phil's house.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It's Phil's house. So just give us some background to this and your awareness of Graham.
The initial background of it would be meeting Cameron in the first place. And when I was at Rogers, Cowan, and Brenner, I had gotten copies of the San Diego Door and read some of Cameron's early pieces. Didn't really know much about him, but thought he might be interested in talking to Rick Nelson and Croce and McLean and some of the other acts I was working with. And I just called him up cold one day, and we talked for a while. And he had done some interviews while I was there, and he was one of the first people I called when we started at Music World. And some of his very early pieces outside of San Diego were done for Music World, well before Rolling Stone. So,
are you in the book? Are you in his
oh
book?
yeah, he talks about all of our interactions, both there and then later
great.
on in Jamaica when we took him to Jamaica. So yeah, you can read his version of all this, his memories of all this.
What did you make of that like 15-year-old kid?
No, we hit it off immediately.
Into your orbit.
No, we hit it off immediately. Similar tastes, and he was a great. He's a great kid. He's a great guy, very talented, and I feel very privileged to have played any role in Cameron's career.
Fantastic, Kim. What are your memories of?
Well, we really kind of think of
Cameron.
We really kind of think of him as like a little brother. I mean, when we took him with us to Jamaica, it was a family unit. We had our 3-year-old with us as well. And Cameron wrote the introduction to my Bob Marley photo book. And I had only asked him for a caption or two. And instead, he wrote this beautiful introduction where he talked about Jeff being his favorite editor and how he looked at us as being like the ideal family. I mean, it was so sweet, it made me cry.
Oh. Yeah.
Admit it, you adopted him, didn't you? You are his adoptive parents.
Well, and he wrote for Music World for quite a few times throughout the year and a half we managed to stay in existence. But the opera, I guess I should point out here that aside from Tom, Tom's comments, I'm fully on board with the country LA Laurel Canyon sound. I lived in Laurel Canyon in '67 while everyone was still here. And by the way, the Tropicana Motel where Tom lived in for many years was like a half a mile from the foot of Laurel Canyon. So it's all in the neighborhood here.
Have you guys lived in the canyon like ever, basically all your lives?
I
don't mean all your lives, but ever since you got married.
Well, I lived here for a year and a half when I first came out and had gone back to New York. And when Kim and I first got together, we lived at a really hole in the wall in Hollywood, and then moved into a Victorian house in Echo Park for a few years. And then I always wanted to get back to the canyon. To me, growing up in New York, Laurel Canyon was like if you got to live in Central Park, where you were in the country in the middle of the city. So it was the best of both worlds, as far as I was concerned. And we found we went house hunting once Orion was born, and we found this little gem and have managed to be here and expand on it over 40 years now. We moved here in '77. So, yeah, I love Laurel Canyon.
Beautiful.
And the day that we met with Graham, we took Cameron to interview Graham. And Graham, at the end of the interview, he said, you guys ought to stick around because I just met this wonderful girl who's coming over this afternoon. She just came into town, and I think you'll really enjoy meeting her. And that was Emmylou Harris. And they spent the rest of the afternoon jamming together. And I think my photos of them jamming are maybe the only photos of them in private. And she always cites him as being her inspiration and her mentor. And it was really only a few months later that he was gone.
Yeah.
Well, by extraordinary coincidence, and I really do mean extraordinary coincidence, Jasper and I yesterday met with the great writer Lorraine Alterman, whose name you will remember. She visited us in London in the Rocks Back Pages office. And the upshot of that was she sent us an audio interview with Graham Parsons last night. So we didn't have very much time to get this together, but we've just plucked a little clip from that interview. It's the 12th of March, 1973. And Mark, are you going to say something about this? Or
well, I mean, let's listen to this clip first, and then we can listen to her talking about the same thing later. I think that's probably the way to do it.
All right, Jasper. So let's just hear this clip.
Chris knew that I was looking for somebody who sang higher than he does, figuratively speaking. And he told me about Emmylou because he was fairly sure I'd been looking for a chick, and I was. So I went down and I went up from Baltimore to Washington to hear her, and I was just knocked out by what she did. It was a lot better than what Chris had described her as. but he had never worked with her. He had only just heard her. Cheers. So he didn't really have any idea of how good she was. She's really good. Hearts on fire. My love for you brought only misery.
It's just perfect, right? And what makes it so more bizarre is that we had already picked for this week's audio interview a conversation with Emmylou Harris from 1987. So why don't we just listen to that now, and then we'll resume with your story and music world and so forth. So Mark, tell us just a bit about this Emmylou audio.
Yeah, she's terrific because she's very articulate. She's very interesting. Adam Sweeting, who did the interview, is a very good interviewer, so the whole thing kind of works really well. The trio album she'd done with Linda Ronstadt and Dolly Parton had just come out. And so there's a lot of stuff about that, about how they'd sort of started it years before and done it in bits and pieces. And then Linda Ronstadt basically called her and said, look, why don't we do this record? And so they met up, selected songs, and so on and so forth. She also talks about some previous albums. I mean, her 13, which is her previous solo album, and about recording Bruce Springsteen's My Father's House, and about thinking of herself as a country artist, but also thinking of herself as being more than that, which is really interesting. And then she gets on to Graham Parsons. So let's listen to this next clip about Graham.
So much as like, I mean, what you're doing now is sort of a continuation of this sort of capturing, like the Graham process.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a continuation of what Graham was doing, because that was all I knew. I mean, that was sort of when I became what the artistic vision that I didn't have. I was just a girl with a voice, that played a little guitar, and it was working with Graham that really sort of gave me that vision. That wasn't exactly sure what he was doing, but when he sang and played, it was there, and I could hear it and I could feel it. And so I just sort of just took that upon myself to say, okay, well, how would Graham do it? Or if I would do something that didn't sound right, I'd say, well, this, I don't exactly know what I'm trying to do, but I know that this isn't quite right. And it was always a matter of following an emotional instinct, something that I was just following. It was really sort of being in the dark, but knowing that there was something. I was just feeling my way, and I'm still doing that, really.
Ooh, Las Vegas, ain't no place for a poor boy like me.
Yeah, I mean, she's really interesting about it. She goes on to talk about the album she made called The Ballad of Sally Rose, and about it had been essentially semi-autobiographical and sort of about Graham. And she's very good, she never says whether they did or didn't, but there's a strong implication that there was a relationship there beyond just
don't know
playing.
what you're talking about, Mark.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we've also come across this before in interviews with her when she talks about Graham. She never denies and never confirms, which in itself is pretty interesting. She talks about the fabulous musicians that surrounded her, like Rodney Crowell and Ricky Skaggs, for example. And she talks about the new country, because this 87 was a really interesting period, because a lot of really good new country music was coming out. I wish it was coming out now. I mean, it was the last great period of interesting stuff. She talks about working with Lala Vet, whose first album had literally just come out at that point. She talks about her appreciation of English audiences. She made it in England before she did in America. When I saw Bonnie Raitt a year later, 1976, at her first London show, Bonnie said at the end, she said, Emmylou told me it'd be like this because the audience are going crazy, and so she talks about the state of country music today as in 1987, not then being a member of the Grand Ole Opry. She later became one. And her marriage to fellow songwriter Paul Kearney, which fizzled out about 3 or 4 years later. But it's great, it's terrific. So it's half an hour, but Adam Sweeting keeps out of the way, asks a question and lets her carry on with it. It's really, really good to listen to.
Well, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. And I mean, how lovely, really, that you guys were there at the kind of the beginning of that short but just beautiful musical relationship that Graham and Emmylou had. I mean, Mark and I are passionate fans of the two albums that they made together. I mean, and there's a live album as well. But just take us back to that day and the kind of ambience of it, and what I mean. How does Cameron remember that day? If you can speak for him.
Well, he speaks for himself in the book. He recounts the whole experience.
Does he? Oh my! Well, we're gonna have to read it now.
Absolutely worth it. But no, we went out to. I mean, first of all, Cameron was still too young to drive. This was for a planned article in Music World that never happened because the magazine folded. So it was a moment. I mean, yeah, we had no idea we were going to see the band either. So when we got out there, it couldn't have been. It was really just like hanging out with musicians for the day that we really liked it. Kim's got extensive photos of all of us. And we're just sitting around on the floor and talking to each other. And it's just a very, very casual experience. And he talked about Sweetheart of the Rodeo and his relationship with Roger. And I would, at some point we will post it. We will get it up there. I would love to do a little short that puts our interview together with Kim's photos and just kind of recount that day, but an actual, visual. So
that'd be fantastic.
So the big treat of the day is once Emmylou was there, and she was very sweet, very shy. We didn't really get to talk to her very much, but we were able to then see Graham and Emmy and the band. They did White Line Fever, Streets of Baltimore, Gene Clark's Feel a Whole Lot Better, and for the first time, we got to hear them do Love Hurts together. Wow. So it was just this kind of magical moment in history. We just happened to coincidentally be there.
Fantastic.
So the only, I think, writings that came out of it was promotional stuff for like Warner Brothers house organs and things like that, promoting the Graham's album.
I wonder if there's something in the Circular magazine.
There absolutely is. There's something in Circular, and I think Wax Paper too, which was their
maybe Wax Paper.
Which after the magazine folded, I did a lot of writing for the labels, bios, and house organs and stuff like that.
Well, and actually, one of the last of the three pieces that we're featuring by you, Jeff, on the homepage is very different from anything else we're going to be talking about. It's this 1978 piece for Wax Paper that you wrote about krautrock. Yeah. It's just this kind of overview of like Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk, and it's just about as far from Laurel Canyon as you can get. But it's a great piece, and maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later.
Okay, well, we'll address it then. But I love that. I love those. I love Popol Vuh and Cluster and Noi, and it was great. And the title of that piece is my favorite pun. I don't know, 6 Teutons, and what do you get? Anyway.
Well, listeners, it's well worth reading that, as well as the Waits piece.
No, thank you.
And an early review of Jackson Browne's first album as well, for Phonograph Record, which is good. We must get more stuff by you on RBP, Jeff.
I've just actually been going through archives. I will absolutely send more stuff.
Oh, fantastic.
But Kim, do you have any other things you would just want to say about that rather magical day with Graham and Emmylou and the Fallen Angels?
I just remember that it was magical. I mean, despite the fact that I don't retain a whole lot audibly, I just remember that it was a magical afternoon.
I really learned to lie, really learned to lie. Love is like a stove, burns you when it's hot.
And as I mentioned the live album earlier, so you can hear the results of what they were rehearsing right on that live Fallen Angels album. Let's just jump forward to, again, just a real kind of departure from all of that is, so you very likely there was a Johnny Nash cover of New Music World, which may have been the first like reggae magazine cover in America, right? So it's also 1973. Johnny Nash on the cover, and that, you know, how did that come about? How did you come to put Johnny Nash on the cover of Music World?
Well, I was a very early fan of reggae, and
early adopter.
Yes, I'll put it that. And of course, Bob Marley and the Wailers' first two albums that were on Island but distributed by Capitol at the time. And I could see clearly now was actually the first mainstream reggae hit. I mean, we did have, My Boy Lollipop and Israelites and a few, along the way and so forth. But that was the first genuinely. And again, it just seemed like an opportunity to focus on something new with an artist that had just broken through, not a superstar per se. And again, that was really behind the simple decision. There was nothing else behind it other than I love this music and let's showcase it.
Well, so that takes us forward to when you're touring Europe as director of West Coast publicity for United Artists, and you're touring Europe with, as you told me in 2007 when I came by to interview about Tom Waits, you talked about touring with Man and Can. And you said, and I wrote this, this is how I transcribed it: one night with the crazy Germans, the next with the drunken Welshmen.
Oh, dear. I probably wouldn't describe it that way now, but yeah, it's pretty accurate.
Well, it's what you said, Jeff. I'm holding you to it. But on that trip, you made it your business to make contact with Chris Blackwell. So can you tell us about just, and when you met Chris, the fact that you had put Johnny Nash on the cover of Music World, was that almost like a calling card, or how did you present yourself to Chris Blackwell of Island Records?
Oh, mainly as a fan of Island and virtually everything. One of the things I love most about Island is the eclectic nature of the whole label, because I love Fairport every bit as much as I love Bob Marley. I love Roxy Music and Winwood, and the label was incredible.
Yes.
And I had heard rumors that he was going to open an American branch independently of being of Capitol and being distributed by Capitol. But I was over there when I was working for UA, and I didn't tour Europe, just England and Scotland and Wales.
Okay, that's enough.
It was definitely enough. It was
crazy Germans and drunken Welshmen.
It was great, and we had signed Deke Leonard. Part of what I would love to discuss as we get to the Blackwell thing is the entire UA aspect of that, and Andrew Lauder and all of the experiences I had with him and those artists that he signed, which are among my favorite of all time. So, at some point, maybe we could talk a little pub rock. But
yeah, I would only say that we did do an episode. I think it was maybe the one with your friend Edwin Pouncey, Mark, where we did talk about Andrew Lauder.
Yes,
when his book came out. So we have actually talked. Look, I can see Jeff's looking upset. He's not, but I'm not going to say we did. We covered all of that, but we did talk in some depth about it. And I love that it's just one of the strings on your bow. Is just this this UA Liberty Records kind of interlude.
Well, I joined you when I worked for UA Records. We haven't gotten there, but it was after the Brinsley fiasco in New York. But I
Were you there? Were you there at the film?
No, but I just love that band.
Yes,
it was it was the British invasion that never happened. That whole group. That I would have loved to have seen, been a part of.
The pub rock invasion in America. That never happened.
The only problem being there aren't any proper pubs.
They all came over and couldn't find any pubs to play in.
They couldn't find their instruments. That was the main thing.
That's the problem, I know.
But we had new wave and punk and disco to deal with here, so I could not break pub rock. But aside from that, at any rate, just by nature of being, I guess a key part of this is that I had a column at Folk Scene magazine called The Cuckoo's Nest, which was specifically about British traditional and trad rock, and enabled me to get free imports sent to me. So
I always loved the way that Phil Lithman, who was the singer guitarist with Chili Willy and the Red Hot Peppers, another great pub rock band, then went back to the States where he's originally from and became Snakefinger with the Residents.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which is like that's a real left turn. Yes.
Yeah, well, you see, we're here to inform as well as learn.
Well, Chili Willy were on that incredible Zigzag concert that Mike Nesmith and Jon Stewart and Starry-Eyed and Laughing.
I was there.
Help yourself. Were you at that?
Yeah, I was there. I was like 15 years old and I was there.
Later on, I became a good friend of Martin Stone, Chili Willy's guitar player, who was fabulous. He's one of the great British guitar players.
Kim, what you had your hand up at the back of the
where were we?
I just wanted to mention that when Jeffrey and I first got together and first got married, even though we were living in total poverty, we were getting lots of record albums because of all the reviews he was doing and because of the magazine. And so when we had our first son, we paid for our pediatrician in record albums.
That's the best story about a journalist selling records that I've ever heard. Paid for the pediatrician.
No fans.
That's fantastic. But Kim, I just wanted to ask you about your own kind of experiences with reggae. Did you guys fall in love with reggae together, or Kim, were you kind of introduced to Jamaican artists through Jeff's association with Chris Blackwell?
Oh, well, Jeffrey's my introduction to all forms of music. Since I'm more visually oriented, I rely on him for my music. And I've got to say that in the last 53 years, he has provided the most fabulous soundtrack for our life.
Yeah, I bet.
He's a man with exquisite taste.
Oh, yes. There's always music playing in our household, and it's always wonderful.
That's fantastic. Some way you described your career, Jeff, as Forrest Gump-like.
Yes,
by which I think you meant just a very, very sort of eclectic and kind of popping up in all sorts of areas of music.
That's probably more Zelig than Forrest Gump, but
Forrest Zelig.
Yeah. But we didn't get into how the Blackwell thing. So if you wanted me to
exactly, so let's talk about Ireland and talk about how you guys both obviously became very close to Bob Marley and were with him for you were a part of his life really for at least 2 or 3 years. So just talk us through that. Talk us, maybe Jeff, just tell us about when you first met Marley and I guess other island reggae artists.
Well, let me just because you had asked earlier, I was good friends with Brian Blevins, who was the head of publicity at Island Records, and I naturally went over to see Brian, and we hung out a lot during that time. And I asked him if there's any truth to that this was in the works and then Chris might open an American label. And he set up, I said, I would love to meet him. And at that point, during one of those, I was lucky enough to have a one-on-one meeting, sit down with Chris. And I think for whatever reasons, I impressed him enough so that a few months later, I got a call from Charlie Nuccio, who was the head of promotion at Capitol during the entire Beatles era, by the way. And he hired him to be the president of Island. And I got a call from Charlie Nuccio saying, Chris Blackwell wants me to hire you. And that's how I got to be at Island when they opened those doors. The first meeting with Bob, boy, I'd have to think about that a little more because frankly...
well, I have it in my book. It says, because Jeff wrote one of the introductions of the book, and it's Los Angeles, July 1975. I first met Bob Marley in New York in June of 1975.
Yes,
it's very handy, isn't it? This is what the benefits of being a two-man team.
Yes, no. Believe me, one of the things I was most worried about today is memory. It does play tricks on you.
Doing fabulously,
yes. But that was right. It was for the Schaefer concert that he did in Central Park. That was the first time. And we did a press conference there.
This would have been his first stuff after Peter Tosh and Barney Wailer had left the band. be around there. So, and around the time of Natty Dread.
Natty Dread was that album that year, wasn't it?
And Jeff got to introduce George Harrison to Bob Marley backstage at the Roxy in 75.
We've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
We've seen the pictures. And apparently Bob referred to him as Ras Beetle.
Yes. He actually said that directly to Ringo. The next time he played the Roxy, Ringo was there. And I went over to Ringo and said that Bob really wanted to meet him. Ringo came over and Bob looked at him and said, Ross Beatle.
Absolutely superb. And obviously, Kim, out of this relationship specifically with Bob, but obviously shot other Jamaican artists. Your 2011 book, Bob Marley and the Golden Age of Reggae, comes out, and there's famous shots in there that, some of which I didn't even necessarily would realize that you had taken. We did have Kate Simon on the podcast a few years ago and talked obviously to her about her Bob images. But there's two shots of his that I particularly loved, which is the shot of him just reading the trade magazines. It's such a lovely sort of detail, just sort of checking on how Wailer's records are doing or whatever, right? And then the cover of High Times magazine. Just describe that to us and tell us how that came about, Kim.
Well, the first one where he's looking at the trades, he was looking at the results of all of the interviews that he had just done when he was in LA that Jeffrey had set up for him. And so he was looking at the results of all of that. And I'm reflected in the mirror in his room. So it's my only selfie with Bob.
Great.
And then, the cover of High Times. Bob usually didn't like to pose. He was not a poser. He didn't mind me being a fly on the wall and just documenting what was going on, during the day and in his home and all of that. But for the High Times cover, he was completely on board and was very enthusiastic. And we brought our almost 3-year-old son, Orion, with us, who considered himself a Rasta. He knew every cut on every reggae album that had ever been released in the United States and learned how to read so that he could read the liner notes on them. And so we took him along to this session, and Bob got a huge kick out of him. And my son is now in his 50s. He has that picture on his wall of him with Bob.
He's just 50. He's not in his 50s.
All right.
That's at least...
Again, helpful to have both of you here. but Kim, for our listeners who obviously can't see the cover of High Times, describe it to us.
There's a huge mound of herb on a coffee table. And Bob is sitting behind the coffee table so that he's just appearing over this mound of herb. And it was only a few blocks from the West Hollywood police station, so it's miraculous that we got away with it. And the herb then was nowhere near as good as it is now, but he was completely on board with it. It was really fun that day.
It's a
fantastic,
great
comment, as strong as it is now.
Yeah. Well,
that's another story.
That's another episode. And then, so you did take a posse of journalists over to Jamaica with you, Jeff, including by now ancient 18-year-old Cameron Crowe in 76, I'm guessing, 76?
Yeah, there were several trips with different people and different artists involved and so forth. But and when Cameron did it, that was alone. We did several visits where we're 3 or 4 people at a time. And then there were other journalists who just happened to be there. Stephen Davis and Peter Simon were down there. Time Magazine sent David Burnett down there. So there was a period of time with different writers and photographers as well.
You must have met some of the English reggae specialists as well, I'm guessing, like Vivian Goldman.
Yes, Vivian.
Did you meet Vivian, and you would have, intersected with, as I mentioned earlier, Kate Simon.
Yes.
And do you remember John Lydon coming over?
Not during my window.
with Vivian?
The trips I were doing were specifically about the American releases as well.
Sure.
Of course.
So of course. Yeah, there wasn't a lot, but there was a lot of great photographs.
The last thing just to mention is if we fast forward to December 1976, you're in Jamaica when Bob is shot on Hope Road, and you're actually in a meeting with Chris Blackwell when you hear that Bob has been shot. Can you take us back to that moment and what happened in the subsequent days?
Well, the idea behind being down there at all is we had Exodus coming out in the near future, but no plans for Bob to be touring the States at any time soon. Mm-hmm. And the experience of seeing Bob live is so electrifying that, and this concert was announced already, that I thought it'd be a great idea to film it. So we would have something to work with. And this was, of course, still before MTV or any, I think we had Midnight Special and a couple of rock and roll shows that you could get footage on. So the idea was to try and capture him it was going to be an outdoor concert and have something to work with over the next year. So, we had the crew down there. Perry Hensel was going to direct it. The night before, I met with Dickie Jobson and Chris Blackwell over at the Kingston Sheraton to kind of discuss the approach and so forth and so on. When Chris got a call saying that Bob had just been shot. And we had heard, literally as we were driving over there, heard the news hit on the radio. So we were listening to the news reports of it and so forth, and ended up going straight to the hospital where Bob was being treated.
Entertainer and reggae star Bob Marley, Rita Marley, and the manager of the Wailers, Don Taylor, are now patients in the University Hospital after receiving gunshot wounds during a shooting incident which took place at Marley's home at 56 Hope Road tonight. And
he had only had kind of minor wounds, so he was out after he had been treated, he was among us, among the group of people who were talking and so forth. And it was Don Taylor that was seriously in that, and we didn't know would make it and so forth. So for over the next few days, it was basically about, one, healing, two, getting Don out of the country, and then wrestling with whether Bob was going to, perform or not, whether this concert would ever go through or not. And it was going to, it's a free concert. It had Third World and Ross Michael were on the bill. So it was going to be a great festival, essentially. Other than the details of what happened over those next few days and his decision ultimately to perform, a lot of this was covered in the documentary that is still on Netflix, I believe.
Okay.
Where we talk about the actual kind of events that took place over that. But if you have any questions, we could talk about that whole thing for a long period.
But it's easier to send our listeners to the documentary, which just give us the title of that so people can go see it.
It was I don't remember the exact title.
Maybe Kim will be able to fill in the missing She had her hand up, so she might have...
I was just going to mention that the movie One Love that Ziggy made as a love letter to his parents, they cast an actor to play Jeffrey.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, were you happy with the choice of actor?
It was nothing that was in the film about that is accurate or accurately portrayed. But the gist
they never are.
Yeah, but the gist of it, in terms of I was one of the voices saying that he should perform. That I thought that he should. That was conveyed, and that Bob trusted me. I think that was conveyed that he wanted my opinion. So I think that was conveyed in the movie. But
they left out the best line that you gave him.
Oh, well.
Which was?
The night after the shooting, when Bob was up at the Strawberry Hill, where Chris's place up in the mountains, up in the Blue Mountains, there was a meeting that included all of the Rasta elders, the family, and musicians and so forth up at this place. And everyone was basically saying this is a sign from Jah and Babylon and so forth and so on. And he at one point said the only way he would get on stage was be with a machine gun, and he did this kind of motion with it. And I'd have to say that Bob was pissed off at this whole,
Yes.
that happened.
You don't say.
and my feeling, and I felt I had to, because I was more in the show must go on tradition, and Woody Guthrie's this machine kills fascists.
He kills fascists.
Of course you got to go. And so when he sent the machine gun line, I said to him, Bob, your guitar is your machine gun. And for whatever it's worth, it got a reaction. So, everyone laughed in a good way, But it was still not up. Literally, it was a last-minute decision for him to go down. And over the course, there were some very interesting things that had happened over the course of that decision-making. There was a point when Roberta Flack turned up in a Rolls Royce pulling into the front yard and had a private meeting with Bob that she has never talked about. The guys who did the documentary on Netflix tried to talk to her about it. She wouldn't talk about it. We have no idea what she said or why she said it or why she was there.
I've never heard that before.
Perry came up and was absolutely convinced that Bob was not going to perform. And so when he left, he had all of our cameras taken down.
Oh, no. What a shame.
So, yeah.
Listen, that line, this machine kills fascists, actually, it takes us neatly into the last stuff we're going to ask you. Because it's fair to say that, well, tell me if it's fair to say that by probably the end of the 70s, early 80s, both of you in your different ways had kind of moved away from music per se, the music business. You've both gone into different areas of the entertainment world. Jeff, you've essentially had, you've done marketing for kind of science fiction and fantasy and horror movies for many years. And Kim, you were famously the stills photographer for the director John Carpenter, and also on Cheers and Family Ties. So you had some pretty sort of solid gigs there, let's say, for a long time, right? Probably where you haven't had to sell your house in Laurel Canyon. So obviously that falls outside the remit of Rock's Back Pages, unless there's anything you want to say about the kind of last 40 years, that's relevant to music.
For me, it's relative to music because what I learned as a publicist and learning how to be a publicist and what a publicist actually does, I took everything that I learned there. And when I did start working in the film business, it was in marketing and publicity. And my entire approach was influenced by how I approach music, in that with music, you go to the fans. You count on the fans to spread the word on music. And that's how people listen, they talk about it, and they play it for other people and so forth. And I was among the very first to take that marketing concept and apply it a year in advance to movies and fans, because fans went to science fiction conventions, they went to comic book conventions, they went to Star Trek conventions, and there were magazines devoted to each of these genres, and you could reach a fan audience that would build over the course of that year. So I think it played, again, my experience in the music business led to how I worked on movies like Blade Runner and Batman, all the Batman movies and so forth, that I was lucky enough to work on. So, and music played a key part in virtually, certainly those films. But I very often wish I'd stayed in the music business, to tell you the truth.
I thought you might say that. It's a hard business.
Musicians are a lot more fun to hang out with. So.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And Kim, obviously, we have to talk about your lovely novel Lenswoman in Love, which came out last year, and so that's sort of an amazing kind of tribute to your sort of rock and roll years. Just tell us briefly about that, how it came about, when you decided to start writing it.
Well, I had such a colorful and varied career that many people had actually said, "Oh, you should write a book. You should write a book." And I didn't want to write a memoir. I needed more structure than that. And so I decided to write a romance novel. And I reimagined my whole early career as a romance novel. And I started writing it about 25 years ago, wrote the first draft, and then put it in a drawer for 10 years. And then I took it out to see if it was embarrassing or to see if it was a good read. And it had so much entertaining stuff in it. I joined a critique group. I rewrote it 3 times completely. You know, on your first draft of a book, you make every mistake you can possibly make. And I ended up with this beautiful, polished book after the 3 rewrites and professional editing and all of that. And it's I have an alter ego, Maddie Garfield. And so she experiences the things that I experienced, you know, photographed the people I photographed. But it gave me room to invent and to add a little wish fulfillment. And the hero it's largely based on Jeffrey because it has Jeffrey's sense of...
I thought it might be.
The book is dedicated to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey is the dashing, romantic white knight hero of the book.
And certainly my hero has his sense of humor and his knowledge of music, because in the beginning of the book, my heroine is a sort of a folk music snob, and he turns her on to rock and roll.
Yes.
And I guarantee it's a very entertaining book. It's already won like 13 or 14 literary awards, and
lovely.
And everybody who reads it gets a big kick out of it.
Well, I seem to recall a bit in it where you're in your sort of folk snob kind of alter ego, you're being a bit snooty about the Beatles, and the Jeffrey character, quote unquote, is like, no, you need to listen to these guys. They're great. They're going to change everything. Yeah, I think am I right? That's part of it. I read it a while ago. But I was so fantastic. Listeners, do seek out Lenswoman in Love, a novel of the 60s and 70s.
And it was published by Conrad Press Limited. They're in the UK. They're in Canterbury.
Okay.
It was the initial printing was done by the same printer who did the first Harry Potter books. And so it is available in the UK.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. You ride those Harry Potter coattails in whatever way you can. Right? So I was earlier, I was just alluding to the Woody Guthrie phrasing of "this machine kills fascists." And so we wanted to just wind up by asking you guys, just a few days after the Super Bowl and the halftime show, and Trump not enjoying Bad Bunny as much as we did. And I know Jasper wants to just say a little something about Bad Bunny and just put all of this in context. And then we may just finish up by asking you, Kim and Jeff, just how you're feeling about things in your country. But Jasper, just tell us what you thought of Bad Bunny's halftime show.
I just thought it was so brilliant and such a great rebuttal to the sort of climate of hate that ICE and Trump and, I mean, in this country, Reform and Nigel Farage are trying to cultivate. And I think that what Bad Bunny did by hosting this massive party at the Super Bowl was, it was a very political act on his part, but it was also fighting all of that with fundamentally love. I mean, for Christ's sake, 2 people got married on live at this. It's just kind of nuts as a spectacle, and it is a bonkers 13 minutes. I don't know how the budget must have been extraordinary. I think it's an extraordinary musical experience, and I thought I'd just read a bit about the politics and his activism from a Barbara Ellen piece in The Observer that was written just afterwards. Bad Bunny's activism, like his music, has been passionate and prolific, revolving around socio-political issues faced by Puerto Rico, a U.S. colony where U.S. citizens pay U.S. taxes but can't vote for the U.S. president, and his devotion to his island homeland. He denounced the U.S. federal response to 2017's Hurricane Maria on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. He performed a 30-day residency in San Juan that boosted the local economy. His songs criticized anti-immigration sentiment. He dropped the US dates from his ongoing world tour because he was worried that ICE would target fans. And Danielle Roper, associate professor of Romance languages and literature at the University of Chicago, is quoted as saying that what she finds powerful is that Bad Bunny doesn't try to be anybody else. He doesn't tone down the fact he's predominantly a Spanish-speaking artist in a moment where there's pressure to assimilate, to not ruffle feathers. And I think that's what's great about his music as well, is that he's so vocally, it's all Spanish language, and he's very much on his own style in terms of reggaeton and dembo and that sound, but he's also incorporating all this salsa and Latin music into the sound. I absolutely loved Debí Tirarnos Fotos, the album last year that's just won the Grammy. And before that, I sort of thought of him as like, yeah, he's a reggaeton artist. That's great for reggaeton, but he managed to just totally expand that world and incorporate all this historical musical stuff into the new record, which I just absolutely adore. I think he's, for someone who is the biggest selling artist, biggest artist on Spotify in 5 of the last 7 years or whatever it is, 4 of the last 6 years, he's a very, very interesting figure. And I love that he's, sticking it to Donald Trump.
Thank you so much, Jasper. That was a very, very elegant digest of what Bad Bunny did on Sunday.
A mí me importa un bicho lo que a ti te vale verga. Aquí mataron gente por sacar la bandera. Por eso es que ahora yo la llevo donde quiera, cabrón, ¿qué fue?
Guys, Kim, Jeff, I mean, is it possible to talk about what's happening in your country now without just sort of just descending into despair or just saying what we already feel anyway? I mean, how are you looking at things at the moment, and how much hope are you able to hang on to?
It's very important for people to know that the vast majority of people in the United States are absolutely horrified by what's going on. We love our country. We stand up for the Constitution. We demand equal justice under the law. And until the felon in chief is held responsible for all of the terrible things he's been doing, we're all going to be in a state of distress for a while. But all you have to do is attend one of the No Kings rallies in order to see how many people care about the country and care about our freedoms and are willing to get out into the streets to express their peaceful but forceful love of our country's values, which are being decimated at the moment. And we have some really good people in Congress who are fighting this tooth and nail. We've got elections coming up soon where hopefully we will take back Congress and we will make people be responsible for the things they have done. And the cover-ups in the Epstein files are just horrendous, where they're covering up for all the pedophiles. And anybody who supports Trump at this point is basically a pedophile protector. And we're standing up. We're protesting. So people should not think that America has just totally descended into fascism, because the vast majority of us are fighting back.
That's great to hear.
Thank you. And I think we do know that, between the three of us, we have enough friends in your country. So, but we're all consumed by it here, for good or for ill.
And I'm glad that other countries are doing their own investigations, because so much is being covered up here that we're relying on good journalists all over the world to delve into what's been going on and to reveal the facts.
Jeff, do you have anything to add to Kim's really passionate words?
Other than I think there is a glimmer of hope that is starting to come through the clouds above us, and and that's where I'm going to focus on. I try not to go down all of the rabbit holes, and try to just at this point live a decent life too.
Yes,
exactly. It's a difficult balancing act, isn't it?
I mean, we come from the original age of activism too. So, I mean, I was at when we tried to levitate the Pentagon back in 19.
Right,
I was there.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. We did not succeed.
And I was on a student film crew. When we, during the Summer of Love, 1967, where we covered the Monterey Pop Festival and the celebration of the summer solstice in San Francisco, and then the police riot at Century City, when people were demonstrating against the war in Vietnam, and the police attacked the crowd, which was really my political awakening. We proved that activism back then can make changes. We did end the war, and we will end the felonious activities that are going on now too.
Oh well,
Great, good.
More power to you.
Yeah.
More power to you both. We will. Yeah, thanks for just joining us today and being such wonderful guests. It's been an absolute blast speaking with you. What we end with is my colleagues here are going to just tell us, as I said earlier, about a couple of pieces, a few pieces that they've added. If you hear anything that prompts you or prompts a kind of memory in you, just jump in. But Mark, what have you got?
Yeah, just a couple of things. Byron Coley, who's a guest recently on the podcast, interviewing Captain Beefheart for New York Rocker in 1979. And he said, you don't interview Captain Beefheart. You have this extraordinarily weird circular conversations and so on and so forth. Anyway, so Beefheart says, once Stravinsky called me to his house when I was doing a thing called Trout Mask Replica. Laura Huxley called and said, the master must speak to you. And I didn't go. I didn't go due to the fact that I was deeply involved with the album, and the people I was with would have probably run right out the doors if I would have left at that time. I didn't go, and I've never forgiven myself for that. But I did sell Aldous Huxley a vacuum cleaner in the desert in Llano, an Electrolux. It's that's just fantastic. And the next one is David Thomas, who of course is the lead singer of Pere Ubu, but he's been interviewed by Ted Maiko, the Melody Maker, in 1985. And David Thomas is not he died very recently, of course, a not insubstantial man. He says, well, look at me. I look like an egg. Physically, I'm monstrous. When you walk out on stage within a medium where everyone is handsome and thin, people are not at ease with fat people expressing themselves seriously. I have things to say, but those things are best expressed through this shifting field effect. I love his acknowledgement of just being this, that rarity of big old man, but very interesting guy, David Thomas, and his death is very sad. So,
Is that it from you, Mr. Pringle?
That's it,
Mr. Mearson Bowie.
Oh, thank you so much. I just have one thing to mention, and I will quote a little bit more from it because it's a longer piece, and it's a wonderful journalistic memoir piece by Joe Muggs, and we got him on board as a writer not that long ago, and this was actually the piece that when it was published back in November 2021 in The Fence that turned me on to him as a writer. It's called Almost Famous. It's about Joel Culpepper, who is a singer. And Joe Muggs begins the piece by writing, everyone who works in music develops their own version of what to do when you're caught out. The fixed smile and just chirpy enough, oh, brilliant, when someone you know in the real world hears what you do and says they'll give you their demo. And everyone's got the polite responses prepared for after listening. It's not my specialism, but yeah, great. This is a really individual statement. I like the percussion, that sort of thing. What you can't prepare for, though, is being handed a demo like the one my son's nursery school key worker gave me back in 2012. And he goes on and he writes, I really didn't want to have to do the polite fob off because I liked Joel, but he did take it home and he did play it. And he writes that he was left reeling, truly at a loss for what to say and not for the usual reasons. Here was someone who channeled Prince, Curtis Mayfield and Marvin Gaye, but in his own distinctly Southeast London voice. He had beats that drew on left field hip-hop and even Balearic styles and sang about Biggie Smalls. He had intriguingly poetic lyrics and hooks for days. He was clearly a star. And it's a fascinating story because it's just one of those cases where this clearly very talented singer, Joel Culpepper, is trying really hard to make it in the music biz. And, 10 years after they met, he kind of did finally start to make it. And he's made a couple of great records. And what I find really interesting is that he's quoted in this piece. And one of the key things to his sort of breakthrough in actually making records and getting them heard was that he and a producer called Swindle started building up much more of a community around it. And so he says, we've been subject to that stardom cliche from the labels, whoever, it's all about you, and we buy into that. But I realized, no, it's got to be about the scene. The Americans know this, so it's never just Anderson .Paak, it's the internet, Thundercat, Flying Lotus there with him. You had the Soulquarians movement with the Roots and D'Angelo. This is a we thing, not a me thing. There's strength in numbers, and we've got to decide to do that. And I love Joel Culpepper. I've seen him a bunch of times now, and I think he's just brilliant.
This keys in with what Jeff was saying earlier about promoting things through the fans. It is about building that. It's a very almost identical approach, obviously in a different age with different mechanisms and so on and so forth. But it is about kind of community and so on and so forth. So it's really interesting to hear that.
And I like the fact that he said the Americans know this. So that's a doffing of the cap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff and Kim.
And I think it's true that, I mean, the piece concludes saying that we're in the age of a true British soul renaissance, which I think is quite true. I mean, Salt and Green Tea Pang and those people, it's great. And the final sentence, well, there's the final two sentences: to have witnessed some of the battles that have made this possible has been both an eye-opener and a privilege. And I never ignore people's demos these days.
Not sure I believe that. But, okay.
But you were just talking about British soul and R&B.
Yeah.
Do you know Brooke Combs? Yes. Does she fit into this in any? She's part of that Brooke Combs. She's part of the whole circle that the choral have created in Liverpool, in the Wirral area.
Oh, in Liverpool. Okay.
I believe
we don't know anything about Liverpool, Jeff. We don't know anything about Liverpool.
I think it's a small town on the.
Okay. Actually, we are going to do a very Liverpool-focused podcast episode in a couple of months.
Really?
Yes, with two Scousers, both who've written of them have written books about Liverpool. So we will be.
Have you ever done this?
We'll get.
I'm sorry. Have you ever done the Skelly Brothers?
Okay. We have not. Really? I know who the choral are. Obviously, I didn't know not heard of Brooke Combs.
Okay, they have a whole group. They're doing some amazing stuff. Of the groups they're supporting, as well as I love the choral. That was the other British invasion that never happened. With the choral and the stands and Jake Bugg. There was some great stuff that was coming out the early part of this century. And I think Dreaming of You is one of the great singles of all time.
There's about 100 British invasions that never happened.
They're ongoing. You should try it again now. We could use you.
That brings us to the end of episode 222 of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to Jeff Walker and Kim Gottlieb Walker for joining us today. Do check out Jeff's writing on Rock's Back Pages, and do buy Kim's lovely novel, Lenswomen in Love, plus the photography collection, Bob Marley and the Golden Age of Reggae. If you enjoy our podcast, please follow it on whichever platforms you use. Please also consider subscribing to Rock's Back Pages itself, or check to see if your local library or academic institution subscribes. And so on that note, it's farewell from us and from our guests, Jeff and Kim, and all together in street corner harmony. Goodbye.
Just got paid, but the man needs to give me a raise. Need to work, 'cause if I don't, I'm gonna hurt.
That concludes episode 222 of the Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guests Kim Gottlieb Walker and Jeff Walker. Visit Kim's website at lenswoman.com and read Jeff's writing on Rock's Back Pages. Those to Barney Hoskins and Mark Pringle, and it was co-hosted and produced by Jasper Murison Bowie. The Rock's Back Pages podcast is part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews at rocksbackpages.com.
I need to provide for my woman. For my woman.